Welcome everyone to the show today. I'm Jeji Flazanes, your host, and today I have a special topic and a special guest. If you are watching this on the YouTube channel, we do have this recorded and you can download it from the podcast and take it with you. And you can find it anywhere you find your podcast, Apple or Spotify. If you are listening on the podcast, we did a video. So come on over to jejiflazanes.tv so you can see Dr. Mindy and I have this conversation, because I know it's going to be something you are interested in, because it's going to apply to all of you, no matter what age you are, no matter what sex you are. But we might focus a little bit more on women just because we're women, and that's sort of the focus that we're taking. But again, I promise you the information today will be important for everyone to know. So welcome to the show, Dr. Mindy.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So one of the things that connected us actually was Dr. Nasha, and I have heard about you through her, and we're sort of on the same team of being in that interworld of the same, goals that we have in terms of information that we want to share with people. And as I was looking more into your work and into your podcast, I love so many things about what you're doing. I've been working in a functional medicine clinic for 15, 20 years, and as a trainer and as an emotional coach, I guess, as an empowerment strategist. And two things that came up for me that was a little bit different that we've done here on the show is slowing down the aging process. So I know we're going to talk about that, but then diet variation. So first, let's just talk about, before we get into diet variation, and I know they heard your bio in the beginning of the show, if they listened on the podcast, just tell everybody, let's bring us up to speed in terms of how you even got into the work that you're doing right now. Like, why talk about menopause? Why in functional medicine? Did you start off as a Western doctor, or did you go straight for functional medicine?
Yeah. These are great questions. I think I always say, followed the breadcrumbs of like either what I needed to know or what my patients were looking for. So my background is I'm trained as a doctor of chiropractic. I was practicing more structural chiropractic for the first 10 years of my life. And then I saw that people weren't healing as fast. And I couldn't quite figure it out. So I went to look at what was happening environmentally. And I found, oh my gosh, like glyphosate was in our food, and pesticide use was up, and lead was in our air and our waters and our soils. And so it led me into this whole place of really wanting to help people understand how to live in this modern world. The world we're living in right now is dramatically different than the world that even you and I grew up in. So I got into nutrition and detox and fasting, and I found that actually those tools were just ridiculously helpful for my patients, that I started morphing more into those tools as a way to help people get their health back on track. And then when I hit my 40s, I had my own menopausal hiccups, and I realized very quickly that my old style of eating 6 meals a day, exercising till I was exhausted, trying to muscle my way into health wasn't working. And so that's when I really had to make another shift. And this shift was really built around diet variation, fasting variation. What is the science saying about what the human body needs? Like, how does the human body thrive? And we can actually, we hear this word primitive shows up a lot, but if we go back and we look at the cave person day, they were living in alignment with the human body, and the modern world really has us out of alignment with our own human body. So from that, I really was able to bring my hormones back into balance. And then I just turned around and taught everybody around me how to do it. And that's how my platform was born.
What a perfect word to use, alignment, since on many of the shows I talk about spiritual alignment, emotional alignment. And so, of course, we have the physical alignment. And I know as a chiropractor, right, you might have meant that more structurally or physically, but I mean it under every umbrella. My company is actually called Invisible Fitness because the things you can't see create the things you can see.
Yeah.
So all of the energies that be, so to speak, the things that aren't visible to the eye actually create what is visible. So alignment is a perfect word. And I want to talk about that a little bit because we have actually talked on the show about fasting. We talked about water fasting, and that was from one perspective. And I love the combination. And before we get into fasting, let's talk about the diet variation, because again, that's something that was a little bit new for me to see on someone's bio or someone's sheet of what we could talk about, because so many times, and again, of course, food is the topic anyone can talk about for so long because there's so many points of view and diet possibilities and science, so to speak, that can back up any point of view you have. If you look hard enough, you can find something that it says, here's what I believe, and here's the science behind it, right? So let's just talk about, again, and I guess diet variation, how I hear that from what you just said to me also means if we're living in alignment with our bodies and with nature, it would mean that we would change our diet based on what was growing or what was around us seasonally. Would that be part of it?
I mean, that's one version of diet variation. I think the first principle to understand with seasonal variation is if you're not aware, the human body is meant to live synergistically with nature. So this idea that nature is just this planet we live on and we're just going to use and abuse it is actually doing our human bodies more harm than good. So when we look and make that decision and say, okay, if we're going to live in alignment with nature, why don't I look around and go, what is nature giving me to eat? And when we eat seasonally, we're moving more into alignment with how the human body wants to be treated. So I'm a huge fan of seasonal eating. I think we are meant to go more into these longer fasted states in the winter time because in the winter, we're not given as many resources. And in the summer, I feel strongly that we are actually we can be eating more fruits and more vegetables because of what nature is giving us. So that's one variation. I think that's well said. The second variation that I think everybody should realize is that every time you make a diet change, a good diet change, you're going to get a good result. For the most part, I should say, but I would say close to every time. If you decide today you're going to go keto, it might take your body some time to adapt, but you'll do well with it. If you decide today I'm going to go vegetarian, I'm going to be a carnivore, then in that switch, you are asking your body to make an adaptation. And whenever you're asking the body to make an adaptation, it will respond with a healing response. We call it a hormetic stressor, and a hormetic stress forces the body to repair. But if you stay in that same diet over and over and over again, now the body's gotten used to it and you're not going to get the same result that you got when you first made the switch, which is why I think it's just ridiculous that we become zealots for one style of eating. I'm not a fan of that. The only diet that I'm hugely against is the standard American diet. But otherwise, there's a place for keto, there's a place for carnivore, there's a place for vegan, there's a place for all of this. And what diet variation does is it gives you the opportunity to acknowledge that and to play with all the incredible principles that a lot of great diets give us.
I love that. And what's really interesting, because again, as your chiropractic background is my personal training background, adaptation, when you said adapt, I was like, what adaptation? I wrote down adaptation because one of the things for fat loss and cycle through, muscle building and early on looking at, and again, from more of a bodybuilder standpoint, not necessarily from a healthy longevity kind of standpoint. And I never went that route like too far. I've never been interested in the extremes of and the surface. Again, I was in a personal training world thinking, why do we care about how much we look like, what we look like versus what we feel like and what we're creating in our body? Anyway, so when it came to adaptation though, for both exercise and food, they're in a bodybuilding world, in a competition world, in a lose a lot of body fat world, there was the idea that there would be variation in your caloric intake, in your macronutrients, in things that, and you would cycle and you wouldn't necessarily stick to one thing all the time. And there was value in variation, both calorically and with your food, and they weren't necessarily called cheat days, but just understanding that, the body gets used to it, adapts in all forms. When you exercise and you do, it's why it was very easy for me as a trainer to get clients, because all I had to do was show people what the science of what happens when you do the same thing over and over again. And if you're disciplined and if you have, and I'd say, do you get results from what you're doing? And they say, No. And I'm like, well, you've been doing the same thing for 5 years. Your body adapted. You're good at it now. It doesn't need to grow into something new.
Right.
It doesn't have to get better at anything, because what you're doing currently is what you're capable of doing. And I love this diet adaptation idea of the healing and the from one to the next, if it's, within. So let's talk about, I know in your newest book, Menopause Reset, get rid of your symptoms and feel like your younger self again. Now, again, the principles that you're talking about apply to everybody, right? It's not necessarily.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, women have to vary a little bit more, and we can talk about that. Especially, we need to vary around our hormones, whether you're postmenopausal or menopausal in the middle of it, or still, younger in your fertile years. Men don't have to think about variation as much, but they still need to vary. So it's different for men and women.
So give me some examples of, and again, I think we talked about like some reasons. Let's start with the reasons why someone who's listening to this would consider a diet variation. What are some of the benefits of it? What are the health benefits you've mentioned, hormonal and adaptation in terms of like some kind of healing, but can we be more specific in terms of results?
Well, let's start with weight loss. How many people have gone on a diet and they're like, this is amazing. I finally found the cure to my weight loss issues. And then a couple months down the road, they stop losing weight. That's a perfect example. Your body had a hormetic reaction and it said, okay, we're going to adapt. We're going to change. This person has made a nutritional change. We're going to burn fat differently. They get a result. And then the body gets complacent, and it's like just like exercise, right? You go and you work with a trainer, they give you a new workout, you feel amazing, and then all of a sudden they're giving the same workout all the time and it stops working. So weight loss is the biggest one. I think the other place that I really would emphasize people to think about is you have a set of bacteria in your gut that wants you to diversify your foods. And if you don't, then they will miss out on making good neurotransmitters that keep your brain happy, that calm you. You will struggle to keep your immune system up. I mean, the microbiome of the gut is just profound in how our brain functions and how our immune system functions. Your microbiome breaks down hormones. So when I was doing one-on-one coaching with people, I would ask people, do you think you eat the same 30 foods over and over and over again? And 98% of the time, people are like, oh yeah, I just eat the same thing over and over again. It's like literally doing nothing for you, because you are taking the bacteria that like those foods and you're just feeding them over and over and over again and starving the other bacteria. So now depression, anxiety, you can't sleep, all of that shows up. And what people don't realize is it was because you've been eating the same 30 foods all over and over again.
Yeah, no, I love that. And something else that, like another word, that a trainer word that's coming out of the recesses of my subconscious that I haven't used in a while is plateau.
Yes.
That you plateau physically. And because again, you're not doing anything to stimulate new growth and new everything, new responses from your body. So, all right. So we've got hormones and microbiome and gut, which we know, of course, equals immunity also, and all kinds of feelings of mood and weight loss. All right. So then let's give us an example now of some of the ways to, like, so if someone's a vegan, they're not gonna, especially depending on, it sounds like for me, like I might do all of them. There's no reason I wouldn't do all of them, but a lot of vegans aren't going to eat meat. So then at what point do we say that it's necessary? And it could be that someone do a variation of a diet within a diet. Like, so if someone's just a vegan. Okay.
Yeah. No, of course. So you could just say that you could be listening to this and just say, you know what? I do eat the same 30 foods. Let me expand. So if you're a vegan, I mean, this is for everybody, but I'll give you an example of how I use it. I love sweet potatoes. So when I go to the store, I look at all the different colored sweet potatoes and I'm like, I'm going to get them all. And so I don't just stay with the same yellow sweet potato. I get the one with the white inside, the one with the purple. Actually, they've shown some interesting studies that the purple sweet potato feeds back good bacteria in the lower intestinal tract. So I get some of that. I'll maybe get some little of the new potatoes, little pink new potatoes, and then I'll get a russet potato. So just within one food group, I've now varied it tremendously. Same thing with lettuce. I never make a salad with the same lettuce over and over again. I'll put chard in it. I'll put romaine. I'll put some parsley, some mint. So I'm doing all of that to help feed my microbiome. We have over 6,000 different species of bacteria in our gut. And if you're eating the same 30 foods, you're limiting the number of species that you are feeding. So we could just take the vegetable world and expand our view around that and vary the foods and vegetables that we're eating.
What about the choices that we're making about when to mix it up? Is there a right time and a wrong time? Is there a better time versus another? That's why I wish initially I asked you about seasonal eating, because I thought, okay, that gives me like, I just moved to Ojai from El Segundo. I live, I think you're in Santa Monica. Yeah, we just moved.
I grew up in Santa Monica, Malibu area, but Ojai is really nice.
I've been coming here for 21 years and we finally did it. We moved. And, then we have a farmer's market, and part of the goal in coming here, and we just bought a tower garden, and we are going to start landscaping, and I'm going to put in some beds for all kinds of vegetables and fruits, and we have fruit trees, but living off my land, so to speak, but I'm excited about it. And I said, we're going to commit to going to the farmer's market and try to get as much as we can from the farmer's market every week just to eat. And by default, that will change based on seasons, based on what's growing. And so is there, other than seasonal, is there another way to choose what is the right diet variation to make at certain times?
Well, for women, there are different needs within our monthly cycle, so we can talk about that. And before I launch into that, I just want to make a point on the farmers market. Another variation that can be helpful is we tend to go the same farmer each time. But each farmer has different quality soils, different mineral qualities. So I always try to vary the farmers so that I'm getting a variation of good minerals coming from their food. So just something to think about. So, but with women, okay, so this is like the mind-blowing thing that people are not talking enough about it. In a 30-day cycle, women, and I'm just going to assume I know some of you have 24-day cycles, some of you have 34, but in a 30-day cycle, you have a lot of different hormonal needs. So in the day 1 through about, actually pretty much till ovulation, which is about day 10, day 11, your body's trying to make estrogen. With estrogen, you want to keep to the lower sugared foods. So you don't want to be eating refined flours, refined sugars. If your blood sugar gets too high, if you become insulin resistant, it will tank estrogen. And if estrogen tanks, now you're going to struggle with ovulation. So the first part of our cycle, the first 10 days, that's a great time to go keto. That's a great time to ditch if you want to go become bread free. If you want to avoid the pastas, avoid it then. Estrogen really likes the seeds and the nuts. So pistachios and walnuts specifically are great for building estrogen, making sure that you can lean into some flaxseed oils. Some of the oils are great too. Then when you go into ovulation, which is about day 10 through day 15, now you've got estrogen at its highest, you've got testosterone at its highest, and you've got a little bit of progesterone. So in order to use those hormones, you need to have a healthy gut. Okay, this is the time to go into like massive green salads, as many bizarre vegetables as you can possibly have. You want to maximize your vegetables during that ovulation window. Then when you go into the after ovulation, there's a dip in hormones. You can go back and do more keto if you want. If you wanted to fast, you could try some longer fasts. And then when you get closer to day 20, this is key. You are making progesterone, and here are the foods you need to be eating to make progesterone. Sweet potatoes being one. Yay for the sweet potato. Potatoes of all kinds, beans, citrus fruits, tropical fruits, grass-fed beef if you eat meat. And yeah, that's kind of those are the biggies. So we are more insulin resistant during the week before our period. And there's a reason for that. The body needs more glucose in its system so that it can make progesterone. So we want to help the body out by elevating glucose, but that doesn't mean we go to a tub of ice cream. It means we go to nature's foods that help us build progesterone so the body can make more progesterone. Then once you start to bleed, you can go back to the lower carb foods.
Okay, so I was tracking and noting from day 1 to 10, 11, day 10 to 15, and then I got at 15, all I wrote down was fast. So
Yeah,
once we've moved,
day 15 to day 19, you can go back into more lower carb foods.
gotcha. Okay, that is beautiful and perfect. And I'm guessing you have some of this in your book.
Yeah, some of it's in the Menopause Reset. Some of it we're teaching in our academy. I've got a new book put together, all built around that. We call it the fasting circle, but it's really eating, fasting together. We have a whole new book that'll come out with that.
Awesome. And you can come back when that is out.
Thank
Let's
you.
talk about fasting now. So, because we've talked about water fasting on the show a little bit and intermittent fasting, and we've done the 5-day fasting mimicking diet. And so I've had all those conversations, and I want to, along with this diet variation and hormones and women and menopause and detoxing, what would be, and I heard some of your podcast, you have a podcast, it's called the Resetters Podcast, right?
Yep.
And you were talking with Dr. Nasha about fasting and I even heard her say that studies have shown that people who just fast 13 hours period do better than people that don't, even it doesn't matter what you're eating within the other hours of the day. But I know that I heard you say you guys do all kinds of different fasting in your groups. So can we talk about the different kinds? And then just like with this diet, are different times throughout the month, different, that you would do?
Yep. So there are 6 fasts that I recommend. They are all based off of timing. I do in the Menopause Reset, I talk about fast mimicking diet. I talk a little bit about dry fasting. For simplicity's sake, I think it's the easiest to talk about these fasting in terms of time.
I don't know what dry fasting is. What's dry fasting?
Dry fasting is not drinking any water. So no food, no water.
Okay. Yeah. Continue.
I wrote about it in the book. And we can chat about that if you want. So here's what the best way to look at it around your menstrual cycle is day 1. Let's go back to these phases. Day 1 through day 10. If you want to do a water fast, a long one, like a 3-day water fast, that's your window. Do it day 1 through day 10. There will be another window coming out of ovulation that you can do it. But any of the 6 fasts, the 6 fasts are all timed. There's a 13 to 15 hour fast, a 17-hour fast, a 24-hour fast, 36, 48, and 72. They're just based off times, and each one has a little different effect. So the longer fast you can do day 1 through day 10, no problem. Now you go into ovulation. Okay. So you've got hormones that are surging. You now need to use those hormones. So I don't really recommend anything longer than a 15-hour fast during your ovulation window, because you just need to use the hormones. We don't want to rock the boat too much. We want to keep that ovulation window. It's short. Do your intermittent fasting. You'll be great. Then you come out of that ovulation window. You're at day 15, 16. You can go back into a long fast. So if you want to do a 24, 36, I call the 36 my fat burner fast. It tends to be the one fast that will really tip the mark for people in weight loss. Do it right after ovulation. If you're not trying to get pregnant, then you can do it then. But here's the key. Again, this is that week before our cycle is where we mess ourselves up. So no fasting starting day 19. If you're an experienced faster, you could maybe get away with 13 hours, but nothing. I really encourage people to not fast the week before their cycle.
Okay, well, this is awesome because already this gives a structure to, again, when and why to do any of the things that we're talking about. Yep. Because, well, I intermittent fast pretty much almost every day, but it varies in terms of, like, it's usually 12 hours or maybe a little bit more. Sometimes it's 16. 12 is the minimum, 13 is the minimum. But so are you saying that don't even do 13 hours of fasting after day 19?
Yeah, I mean, here's the little nuance to this. If sounds like you're fat adapted. If you're fat adapted, then and you're used to 13, there's no cortisol spike for you when you do 13 hours of fasting. For a lot of people, there is a cortisol spike, and anytime we spike cortisol, we tank progesterone, and your body is trying to make progesterone that week before your cycle. So we want to just kind of chill. We want to eat our nature's carbs, go watch your Netflix series, do some yoga. Like we need you to chill the F out and build yourself some progesterone. And then boom, once your cycle starts again, what you'll see is you're not hungry. You'll want to fast. You'll want to stay away from the carbs. If you're listening to this and you're like, but that's not me. The first couple of days when I am in my cycle, I'm just still carb craving. It's because you didn't manage the week before. That week before is pivotal, and we want to make sure you manage it well.
Excellent. That's amazing. And so basically your 6 fasts, like you said, are based on time, 13 to 15, 17. So interesting 17.
17 is when autophagy starts, and it's so highly debated on my group. It's so funny. So autophagy is where you go 17 hours without food, and the intelligence inside our cells goes, oh my God, I need to clean this up. So it starts then, but it peaks at 72 hours. So that's why we say 17, because a lot of times people want to detox with fasting. So you got to go at least 17 hours.
Excellent. Awesome. That's amazing. All right. Now, that's just basically a recipe for success. So, yeah. And when it comes,
right? I think so too. Yep.
That's pretty clear. So what happens? What happens when someone is after menopause though? Does that still apply?
Thank you for asking. It's still the circle part of it that I just explained, the 30 days isn't as pivotal, but postmenopausal women need to understand that your progesterone is tanking. You are not getting your progesterone back like you had it in your when you were 35. So at least one day a week, I encourage you to step out of fasting and go into those nature's carbs. You just don't have to cycle it to anything. So you can do it a little more like a man can fast, but men don't have to think about progesterone. Postmenopausal women need to. So just at least one day a week, step out of fasting and make sure you lean into those carbs. If you've run a hormone test on yourself and you have low progesterone, you might do it twice a week, where you just step out, eat breakfast, get yourself some hash brown country potatoes, throw some sweet potatoes in there. And then the other days go a little lower carb, fast a little longer.
I had hash browns for dinner last night. My partner Doug is out of town driving cross country to bring all his rest of his stuff now to our house, and I've been working and not going to the grocery store. And I had hash browns in the freezer, and I used grass-fed butter, and I put on some truffle salt, and I was in hog heaven.
That sounds incredible.
With some cage-free, pasture-raised, organic eggs. So pasture eggs, and I had breakfast for dinner, and a kale salad. So
amazing.
Which is like a random dinner, but when I'm by myself, I get to do stuff like that.
Another good variation on eggs, by the way, we go back and forth between duck eggs and chicken eggs. We've even done a goose egg. So that's another great variation option.
I keep telling one of the ladies at the farmer's market, I'm coming back. I'm going to buy your duck eggs. I haven't had them for a while. I've never had them just like I make regular eggs. I think they've always been mixed into something. Can we talk for a second about andropause? So for men that are also over 50 and have gone through andropause, which is basically like male menopause, because their hormones aren't quite but their testosterone goes down. Is there any of this that helps them to rebuild testosterone?
So testosterone is really interesting. There's a couple key things for both men and women, but especially like you said, for men, we need to be aware of it. So women's hormones typically go in a cycle of 30 days. When she goes into postmenopausal, she may actually still cycle with the moon. That's a whole nother discussion. Men, your testosterone's coming every 2 hours. And sometimes it's even sooner than that. It's like every 15 minutes. It's just pulsing. So the first thing, as you lose testosterone, you're going to benefit more from staying insulin sensitive. So as you go through the aging process, you want to make sure that you are having some keto days, whether you like keto or not. You don't need to become a ketogenic diet fanatic, but some days you want to pull the breads and the pastas out and make sure that you are keeping yourself insulin sensitive. Second thing for men is that intermittent fasting has shown to be, in research, a 1,300% increase in testosterone for men when all they do is fast 15 hours. That shoots up to 2,000% increase in testosterone if they go 24 hours. So if you are going, as you age, you're like, oh my gosh, my testosterone is down. You pick up fasting and get yourself insulin sensitive, and that will be, that'll be amazing for you. The other thing that I would say with testosterone is chemicals, where phthalates specifically, all the colognes, the fragrances, all the laundry detergent, the Christmas trees hanging from your car, your rear view mirror, all that those toxic chemicals are going to tank your testosterone.
Who has those? No one listening to this show has those,
the
right?
Uber drivers do. It's the Uber drivers.
I don't think Uber drivers listen to my show, but correct me if I'm wrong. Yes, please take that toxic crap out. You can get, I don't have it. I have a portable wireless diffuser, and I have one in my car. It's not wireless, but I have a new one that's wireless. So you can be pumping the air, if you're going to need to pump the air, with essential oils, which will be better for everybody than the Christmas tree hanging. The toxic chemicals. And that's a whole nother story. And I definitely want to talk about the moon cycling, but not now. I want to continue on just to kind of cap off the diet variation conversation. And you said the only thing you're against is a standard American diet. And weight loss being one of the things, gut biome. So we're looking at immunity and just adapting and keeping our body healthy. It's like optimal health is diet variation. Are there any, and because I heard you say glyphosate in food, I've been gluten-free since 2008. Now, with the exception of when I went to Italy twice. And from what I understand, the foods are different there than they are here. They're not spraying and using all the same chemicals we're using. And most of the time I am dairy-free. And that's more because my I love cheese, but even if I eat grass-fed cows, hormone-free dairy, although I haven't tried raw recently, I get congested, I get constipated. So my body doesn't like it. And it's because of that I tend to stay away from it. Otherwise, I love it, but I don't eat it. So what would you say might be some foods like that we want to just take out altogether completely because of things like that?
Yeah, well, gluten definitely, like you said, is something that I think most people will thrive and when they take it out, and people will say, "Oh, I'm so lucky I don't have a gluten intolerance." And my response to that is, it's a bell curve. You're on the bell curve somewhere. Some people have it really bad, some people don't. The second thing I would say, and this is a food that most people are not aware of, which is your oils. You got to get off the canola, the 3 C's, the canola, the cottonseed, the corn. That is going to tank every hormone in your body that is leading you to chronic disease. So get off of those oils, partially hydrogenated, get them out of your house. And here's the crazy thing. If I came in at night and I swapped out all your oils, you wouldn't even tell the difference taste-wise. So stop eating them. Get the toxic oils out, get the gluten out, get any refined flour, even if it's gluten-free. We got to get away from when I saw Betty Crocker was making gluten-free cakes, it's like, that's not gluten. Just because it says it's gluten-free doesn't mean it's health food. So those refined flours, refined sugars, we got to get them all out.
What about grains? Where do you stand on grains?
There's, ancient grains are phenomenal. Sprouted grains are good. I think anything that's not sprayed with glyphosate, doesn't have Bt toxin in the seeds. Those are all fabulous in moderation.
What about corn?
If it's non-GMO, definitely fine. If it's not, it's poison.
Right. No, I know. And it's hard to find, I'm a sucker for a homemade tortilla at a Mexican restaurant or a restaurant that we went to over the weekend. And I was like, oh, they make their own homemade blue corn tortillas and I thought, but it doesn't say if it's, GMO or not. I won't buy them in the store. And I even have a tortilla maker. One day I thought about I'd make some too. Maybe that'll happen. But I try to stay away from corn because it is, if it's not if it is genetically modified, it is a poison.
It's
And
poison.
I know I just want to stay away from it. So, okay,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah. I have on the corn thing, we have a restaurant literally right across from my office. And when it's a Mexican restaurant, and when they opened up, the number one like piece of marketing that they said was that their corn was non-GMO. And can I tell you that there's a line out the door for that place every single day? And I'm like, because they made that one switch, people feel good after their corn, I'm sure.
I had an experience with corn when my partner Doug moved to town. He's from Baltimore originally, a couple of years ago, and we went to a Mexican restaurant in Manhattan Beach. I made it halfway through the corn chips with the guacamole and some salsa and had to lay down because my stomach hurt so badly. I was so bloated. I looked 8 months pregnant and I was hurting. And I was like, I had never had that reaction that badly to corn, but I knew 100% it was crappy corn. And I was like, so we've never eaten there again, unfortunately. And again, I don't want to be eating it, but I wanted to see. And again, people don't really love extremes, but I love the reasons. I was telling a story the other day about that I'm not the neatest person. I'm not a mess, but I'm not super neat because it doesn't affect my manifestation, doesn't affect my happiness level, doesn't affect my health. However, when I learned about feng shui, then it gave me a reason to get rid of some clutter. Now I have a reason why this space over here needs to be clean all the time because it affects my money. And so what I love about this comparison to when to eat, what to eat, it's not random. There's a reason for it. And I'm all about the reason because otherwise people are confused and they don't really want to have to think that hard. They'd have to sort of learn all the same things and know all the same things to be able to follow that. So do you offer either in the book or in your Resetters program, the membership that you have, like sort of diets that people can follow and recipes and things like that?
Yeah. So in the Menopause Reset, I talk about a lot of books, especially for women going through the menopause process. Any woman over 40 will benefit from the foods that are in there. In our Resetter Academy, which is our membership group, all my new stuff is living in there. The fasting circle I talked about, where I go through and show you what to eat at different times. We have recipes that we match those to, and we're vegan friendly, we're carnivore friendly. We let all different types in, and yes, we have lists, we have recipes, we even had people come do cooking classes. So definitely, there are a lot of resources.
Excellent. What other, so your practice is working specifically around these hormonal changes, or is it just, again, open to anybody? Are you just a functional medicine doctor and these are some of the specialties that you focus on?
Yeah, I no longer do one-on-one patient work. We do everything through our academy. So I'm teaching people fasting variation and diet variation in the academy. And what we're doing there is we're really helping people figure out how to find their groove with that. And that, I think, is the most important thing. You can listen to a podcast like this and you grab the concepts. Okay, now let's help you find your groove with it. So that's really one of the best places to get assistance on how do you customize this for you. But yeah, I no longer do one-on-one work with people.
Yeah, I'm getting there. One more topic I want to talk about that I mentioned at the beginning of today that sort of stuck out to me about you, and that was slowing down the aging process. Now, I'm guessing everything we've talked to slows down the aging process. Yes? Yeah. Anything else to add about that, like the importance of fasting? And again, what's going to be coming after this podcast is another podcast about the fasting, the water fasting. Yeah. But we didn't necessarily cover, well, we did, but the aging. So can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah. So if you and I were standing in line at farmer's market and you're like, oh, you do fasting? What would you say is the best, or you're in functional medicine space. What's the best thing for me to do around slowing the aging process? Fasting, hands down, is the best thing. And it's the longer fast. So let me tell you a couple ideas behind this. When we start to fast, we improve growth hormone. So as growth hormone goes up, growth hormone slows the aging process down. So you can start to get that around 15 hours of fasting. At 24 hours of fasting, you reboot intestinal stem cells. So you get a massive dose of stem cells, and now your gut that has been damaged from poor eating for so many years, that gets replenished, and now you're going to make better neurotransmitters to keep your brain happy. When you go into a 48-hour fast, you reset dopamine pathways. So all those dopamine pathways that have been saturated from trying to get your dopamine from social media and your Netflix binging and your food, you're going to open those up. You're going to start to reset. So as people age, we hear a lot of people saying, I'm just not as happy as I used to be. We'll throw some 48-hour fasts and your happiness factor will start to go up because you reset these pathways. We also know at 48 hours that there are antioxidants that start to come off the Krebs cycle, which is the energy system of our mitochondria. And these antioxidants are specifically designed to slow the aging process down. So 48 hours, again, is really great. 72, you reboot your whole immune system and you wipe clean your immune system. So fasting, what it does is it regenerates the damage that is happening from living life, just normal life. And if you've had a lot of standard American diet, you've had a lot of stress, the more you fast, you can undo that and slow the process down.
That is good news. And do you think it applies? And I don't know if you can speak to this to the degree we've been able to speak to it about humans, but think this applies to animals too?
Our dogs fast. So, and people would think we're like cruel, but I'm telling you, I ran it past a holistic vet first, but they fast in the wild all the time. So our dogs get one meal a day. And then there are a couple of times we'll give them a 24, we just won't feed them. And then the next day. And that whole purpose behind that is to keep them young. We lost one of our favorite dogs to a Rottweiler that we loved at 7 years to lymphoma. We were like, never going to make that mistake again. And so these two dogs, we fast them, we feed them grain-free diets. And yeah, we'd use the same principles.
I have a little one she's my special needs. And the only way I'm going to get her to fast is if I just leave her by herself. Like, I don't know how do you do it? Is that what you have to do? Because how do you get an animal who I've been overfeeding because she emotionally is an overeater because she can't see because she's not even 3. But they're very demanding, like emotionally. Yeah. You can't get any work done if you're starving your animal. So do you have to just leave them or have you gotten them trained?
I have heard people do that before. The dog that had lymphoma, when we got the diagnosis, we went from twice a day to once a day of feeding, and we switched out any grains. So that helps if you're just doing raw meat or you're doing something that's a grain-free product. That will help. You could put some fat in her meal. That will help so it stabilizes her blood sugar. And yeah, it was a little rough for a day or two, annoying for a day or two, and then she figured it out that dinner was the only meal she was getting was dinner.
Okay, I've been feeding my animals a grain-free diet for many years. And in fact, I was even making my own homemade food. But when you have 3 cats and they all won't eat the same thing, it was very challenging to try to get them to eat my homemade food with good vegetables and kale and fats and then put the extra nutrients that they need from, I think someone had recommended to do that. And I'm like, yeah, well, why would I cook my meals from scratch? I make my own chicken broth. I make my own butter sometimes. Why would I make my own tomato sauce? Why wouldn't I make my own cat food? Hello. Right. So I tried it, but then, getting them all to eat the same thing was challenging. So, okay. And I wanted to add that in because I have left them last week. I came home with some broken dishes and a bag of the food open because they had to find it themselves. But it was the idea that, hey, I'm going to fast you because it's good for you. And I'm not going to have somebody come feed you every day. You're going to go 24 hours. Yeah. I'm going to leave you food. And then that's it. That's all you get for 24 hours. So, okay. Well, this is a conversation. Now, just one more question about the fasting. And I know for those of you that are wanting to talk more about it, we're going to go into it a little bit more on a future episode, probably coming right after this, that I've already done. But what are some of the ways that you handle people's emotional issues around fasting?
Yeah, so fasting can be a mind game for sure. And let me just preface this by saying that I was raised by a mom who you would come home and you would say, if you had a bad day, she would say, let me make you a meal. And she would start that I learned that if you're not feeling well, you eat. So when I came to fasting, this was a problem because when you first learn how to fast, if you're not feeling well, but you're not eating, what are you going to do? So there's a couple of options with that. Is that the first thing is just be aware of the thoughts that are coming up. It's a really cool way to get a mirror on your relationship to food. So that's the first thing I would say. The first time I did a 24-hour fast, oh my gosh, I'm going to die. I'm feeling dizzy. Why am I doing this? I need to eat to feel better. But the cool thing about the body is that we were made to fast. Just like we were made to sleep, we were made to fast. And so you're just training your body to start to get used to it. And once the body starts to make ketones, ketones will go up into the brain and it will cut off the hunger hormone. And once that hunger hormone goes off, if fasting gets easier and easier over time. The second thing I would say, so be aware of your emotions. Also, and I know this is like super trite, but your food is a state changer. So find other ways to change your state. Listen to music, dance, do things like that so that you can start to get yourself fat adapted. And then the third thing is if you're really struggling, but you want to keep going, have some fat, have an avocado, have some nut butter. Fat will stabilize your blood sugar, so you'll feel a little bit better, and then you can continue on with your fast.
Great answer. And to be more continued. Now, Dr. Mindy, you can go to drmindipelz.com. It's on the screen here. It's also in the show notes for those of you who aren't watching the video. You also have a ton of videos on your YouTube channel, correct?
I do. Yeah, we have like over 600 videos there. Most of them done on fasting. There are some great ones on diet variation. A lot of people love those. So if you just put diet variation in the search, you'll find those as easily as well.
Excellent. Well, this is going to be a conversation we will continue. Also check out Dr. Mindy's podcast, Resetters podcast, right? Resetters?
Yep. Resetter podcast. Yep.
Okay. And thank you so much for being here today. I hope you'll come back. We've got a lot more we can share with people that we've touched on that you teased me with about the moon. I definitely would love to talk about that. And then any other questions anyone has about this, of course, be in touch with me or with Dr. Mindy. Check out our YouTube channel, check out our website, check out her podcast. And hopefully we'll see you back here again soon. Thanks, Dr. Mindy, for being here.
Yeah. Thank you, JJ.